rough day. Well, hello again. The purpose of today's lesson is for me to educate you a little bit on the Kansas-Nebraska Act that is going to follow the Compromise of 1850 when it is passed in 1854. And it is centered around one major idea that came out of the Compromise of 1850. Allow me to explain. Your due now for today is to define popular sovereignty. So what I'd like you to do is pause the video, take a second, think back to last Tuesday's lesson earlier this week, and define popular sovereignty for me. I'll just wait like the hottest of seconds. Wonderful. Okay. So, popular sovereignty, by definition, is allowing people to make a decision for themselves based on basically their vote. That's how we determine what people's opinions are and beliefs are in the United States of America. So, obviously, we're talking about this issue of slavery here because we're pushing towards the American Civil War. And popular sovereignty was the belief that if people wanted to live in a state that allowed slavery, they should be allowed to. That's what popular sovereignty is all about. And so the territories that we're really looking at here are the Kansas and Nebraska territories, which is why it's called the Kansas-Nebraska Act. Very straightforward. Okay, so what was the purpose of the Kansas-Nebraska Act? So the purpose of it is to allow people to decide whether or not they want to live in a slave state or a free state. This is going to be in what will eventually be the states of New Mexico, Utah, Kansas, and the Nebraska territory. So all these different territories that we have here, this is what we're trying to determine. Utah, New Mexico, Kansas, Nebraska. So we want those people to be able to decide in 1854 what kind of lifestyle they'd like to choose. So what are the pros to this Kansas-Nebraska Act? First, it allows people to choose the lifestyles in which they would like to live, although quite immoral and unethical. Who is the United States government to say you shouldn't be able to live a certain way? Now, it also would give an opportunity to connect the Transcontinental Railroad. The Transcontinental Railroad is it's an idea at this point to connect the east coast of the United States all the way to the west coast. So we would be able to get from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean if that was what we needed to do to try to become one unified country. So what are the cons? What are the negatives to the Kansas-Nebraska Act in 1850? It's going to totally undo the Missouri Compromise. If you remember from the last lesson and back when we were in school, the Missouri Compromise said that states north of the 3630 parallel would be open to being free states and just free states, and south of that would be open to being slave states if that's what they chose to do. Now what we're going to see is that that's going to be totally undone. So for the rest of this lesson, I'm not going to give you any of the answers, mostly because I don't really like children, to be honest. I have no idea why I went into teaching, quite frankly. I'm just kidding, obviously. You have this PDF that's attached to your assignment here. In the Kansas-Nebraska Act, the first question that it's asking you is, what are the 4 territories, including Kansas and Nebraska, so that's 1 and 2, that are open to popular sovereignty? Well, I see down here in the key, slavery determined by popular sovereignty, in an orange box there. So we should be trying to make that connection as to which 4 territories we need to be addressing here. The next question is going to ask you, why would that upset people in the North, and why would that upset people in the South? Now remember, the Missouri Compromise, North free states, South slave states. How is that going to upset both sides? And lastly, in the PDF, you should be looking for this event called Bleeding Kansas. Bleeding obviously tells you that there's going to be some violence here. There's absolutely going to be some violence here in the Kansas territory. How do the ideas of popular sovereignty, which sound wonderful on paper, how is that going to turn physically violent? And so what I need you to do is, in the graphic organizer, which is going to be underneath here, you're going to read and find about Bleeding Kansas. This guy, John Brown, who's going to come up again, it's not going to end so well. So territory became known as Bleeding Kansas, yada, yada, yada. I want you to read that, and I want you to give me, let's say, 3 sentences on how all of a sudden the United States goes from this place that's allowing people to make decisions for themselves into now what we're seeing as two sides who really hate each other and just want to kind of over this issue of slavery, which seems so horrible in the first place. If you have questions, feel free to join my office hours. They're now on Tuesdays and Fridays, Tuesdays and Thursdays. They're not on Tuesdays and Fridays, from 11:30 to 12:05. All right, adios, my little homies. Stay woke.